skill of the disabled, from A to Z. Talking about
level is relevant to the teachers. So here we identified more cases and we referred to further treatment, and then they now start to identify that different children may have different problems and they need proper treatment and referral at the hospital setting. The teachers themselves or the parents themselves cannot manage the whole problem, so they can actually refer, and now they know what autism is, what neurology is, what speech problem, so they ask for referral and proper management. With regard to job satisfaction in particular, we have one module on job stress management, and then the study, the results of the scores in job dissatisfaction showed a significant reduce in job stress in the teachers immediately after, significant as immediately after the module. At the university level, we cannot help but to have something which is very concrete for our KPI. So this is the publications and presentation which was successfully done in these 2 years. We've got postgraduate student, one PhD student, Ms. Seong Ting, who presented yesterday. We've got 2 Master of Science students who are now in progress to complete their study, and 3 Master of Public Health has completed their study based on this project. Okay, last but not least, the discussion. So this is a comprehensive help to the disabled in Kelantan. We found as well interactive workshop rather than just talking or lecture technique is effective in give new knowledge and skills to the teachers. We also found improvement in knowledge of the teachers, and this was evident from a number of new referral and cases identified needed for further medical arrangement. And at least in one module, we found that it was able to reduce job dissatisfaction among teachers. However, the limitation of this project is that the instrument that we use to measure the outcomes is limited to the delayed effects. The assessment may be too early because we train these teachers to train another teachers who have no opportunity to come and join our program. We are planning to do for every module. We have a proper training module, and then we are in the process of doing CD, demonstration CD on how to do. Our center have been undergoing several modules, and they gave a good feedback, and they have used their new
One Ismail Ibrahim from Malaysia also. The title of the presentation is Factors Associated with the Quality of Life of Disabled Children Attending Community Rehabilitation Center in Kelantan as well.
Associated with this quality of life of disabled children, where when we identified these factors, we could help the teachers to improve their quality of life of their children. So, as an introduction, we know that in the improvement of the healthcare technologies, with the presence of the sophisticated investigations and also the
from Thailand, Ms. Sukuma Arunchip. Okay, she will be discussing PALMR. So this is actually participatory action learning and participatory action research. So to discuss more about this, we have Ms. Suku.
Thank you. Swadika. What I am going to present to you is results from Dr. Suwachara Piamyat and I rewind experience as supervisor and social worker. Today I would like to present you our article PAL+R, the design of social work field education between university and community. Okay. For the bachelor of social work degree, the objective is to prepare graduates with one competent in integrating body of knowledge, two professional attitude and skill related to practicing in various agencies, 3. Competent in developing new practice strategy and applying professional to work with people, organization, community, and society, embracing national, regional, and international level as well as 4. Competent in working appropriately with interdisciplinary. Fieldwork education nowadays, there are only 3 compulsory courses which are follow SW201 field visits and seminar, which will provide opportunity for students 1. To explore their interest about social welfare agencies, and 2. To visit and interview social worker about social work tasks in agency. Students must observe, record, and bring information to classroom activity for information exchange and discuss what they have learned. SW202 Fieldwork Practicum 1, which will be the first field practicum for students in social welfare agency, where they are professional social workers. In this fieldwork, students, upon their interest, will practice for at least 270 hours to apply concept, theory, principle, and skill on interpret social work method in social welfare agency and welfare system development relevant to Thai social context. SW301 Fieldwork Practicum 2, which will be opportunity for students to live and or work with the community. They will learn how to apply concept, theory, and principle and interpret social work method in working with urban or rural community. They will learn how to encourage full participation in every step as well as learning new strategy for working with community. If engaged scholarship means academic work missions that are socially relevant and socially engaged. How can engagement scholarship be enhanced through the design of social work field education? The author proposed that PAL plus R would be the design of social work field education between community and university. PAL plus R is the combination of participatory action learning and participatory action research. Okay. The social work field education, this is a capstone experience and serves as a vital means of preparing social work students for generalist professional practice. Field education has been a collaboration partnership between the university, the community, the social welfare agency, and the professional social worker. The field practicum offers opportunity for students to learn, interpret, apply, and contribute to social work knowledge, skill, and value under the supervisor of a qualified instructor. Based on her experience as a social educator, through her self-reflection, Piamyat revealed that participatory action proved to be beneficial in social work field education, revealed that participatory action learning proved to be beneficial in social work field education, and action listening technique and reflection proved to be a necessary tool for participation action learning, which led to increased self-awareness for both students and teachers, supervisors. Such awareness would have led them to transformative learning. Based on domain of learning, transformative learning, as presented by Piamyat, teacher-student relationship that based on powerless structure, which focus more on love, care, correction, information sharing has significantly effect on learning process, critical thinking, and self-awareness, which would finally lead to transformative learning. Through the process of becoming critical awareness of how and why their assumptions have come to constrain the way they perceive, understand, and feel about the world, learner would change the structure, habitual expectation, and would be able to make possible a more inclusive, discriminating, and integrating perspective, and finally be able to make alternative choice or action upon this new understanding. As being emphasized in social work field education, there are several considerations about role of teacher in transformative learning. He or she should build trust and care atmosphere as well as facilitate the development of sensitive relationships between teacher and student and all among students. As presented by Piamyat, helping students be in the process of transforming teacher needs to build the learning environment to facilitate students to be more inquiring, self-assertive, questioning, and more alternative available. Okay. Role of student in transformative learning. Each individual should share the responsibility for constructing and creating the conditions under which transformative learning can occur. Each needs to think about his or her own thinking related to one's own practice. Each can describe his or her practice, explaining one's own action, the thoughts and the feeling which he or she was acting, as well as describe the thoughts and the feeling that occur after the action. Such one's own practice and the activities of sharing the experience need full participation of each individual in order to be effectively lead to the goal of learning. In the state of preparation for social work practicum, the question about where and how to cooperate the social welfare agency and all the community has been raised for the design of social work field education. The reflection on this field work will make students gain further understanding of course content, further appreciation of discipline, and will enhance their sense of social responsibility. Traditionally, the university has ability to choose when and how to cooperate various social welfare agencies and all community. Themselves presents community engagement initiative have the potential to further mutually transformative relationship between university and community of which they are a part, centering community engagement effort on the co-production and application of community knowledge. University-based participants should demonstrate an ability to listen to and learn from community-based participants. Community engagement can take on many different forms and shapes within content of higher education. For the design of social work field education, it is important to integrate community engagement with teaching, learning, research, as is illustrated in Figure 1. R is the active involvement of the people who share commitment that community members bring to the process, knowing, create knowledge and acting on that knowledge to bring about change. R is the participatory cooperative, engaging community members, researchers in a joint process in which both contribute equally. R is a systematic investigation with the collaboration of those community participants for the purpose of education and taking action or effecting social change. The common component of power and power, both power and power are based on empowerment principles and both share common component of participation and action. Conclusion. through PAR, social welfare agency, and all community are active participants in planning, designing, and operating the social work field education. Participation method used in action learning and conducting research are useful for both the university and communities. Engaged scholarship can therefore be enhanced through PAL plus R as the design of social work field education between university and community. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, so any comment, question, additional info, or any sharing also related to this presentation? No? Okay, so thank you very much. Okay, so our next speaker is Dr. Asbinda.
Basically for the rural is 650 ringgit below, but for the urban population living slightly above PLI, which is the income is about 1,000, 1,500. It consists of blocks of flats in the city of Georgetown, Penang, solely in the city in the heart of Georgetown. These blocks of flats, if it's in Australia, it's like condominiums or apartments, but in Malaysia, for the local.
In Australia, it has a brand recognition of over 98%, and it has a community trust level of over 95%. So we've looked at working with Lifeline. I've spent the last 2 years working very closely with Lifeline, and looked at how the Australian College of Applied Psychology can also work with them to have a mutual benefit. So that symbiotic relationship that we were talking about earlier. A brief overview of ACAP. We're part of the Navitas group, and we sit within the workforce division. We've been in operation for over 28 years, providing counselling education. So that's the area that we operate in, although we have now moved into being a dual sector provider, where we have the vocational educational programs for certificate and diploma, and also our higher educational programs that go from degree through to masters. Professor Ione Lewis, who you may have heard on the panel this morning, is also the president of PACFA. So we're very well connected with our counselling faculty and counselling community in Australia. Our psychology courses are accredited with the Australian Psychology Accreditation Council, and we were the first private educational institution to receive that accreditation.
The physical hazard, another one on health hazard. And at the same time, it is compulsory for any supplier of the chemicals. From the manufacturer could be in Germany, but when it comes, for example, to Malaysia or to Thailand, they have a local distributor. The local distributor has the responsibility, regulated. If you don't do it, it's an offense. They need to provide what we call safety data sheet. It's more detailed, because looking at the level is insufficient, but the level will give a basic idea what are the immediate hazards will be there. But in addition, the supplier should give this. So typically, anyone buying chemical will have this. But this is the assumption we have because it's been trained. So looking at if you read the safety data sheet, it's a typical that whoever handles hazardous chemical, they need to have certain minimum facility available at the workplace, especially in the laboratory, so that they can able to handle the chemicals, minimizing the exposure to themselves, either direct contact by inhalation. So therefore, typically in the safety data sheet will describe that you would need, typically these are the requirements. Means whoever handles chemicals, if you buy chemicals, you should have a certain time. 20 years ago, it's already there. But those days, we become like rule of thumb, we take for granted it's there. So we assume it also still available and been functioning until at the schools. This was the assumption we had. The if the kit for chemical spill, well, spills always happens. You had the chemicals. But in Malaysia, we have a special regulation on fire. I think typical like in the United States, in Europe, we have the fire department have their own act, compulsory that in lab or even in rooms, you need to have extinguishers. You need to have sand buckets to fight fires in case it does happen. The fifth facility is compulsory in a chemical lab is to have a urban energy wash. Either you have an eye wash or you have a shower. In any chemical lab, you still have a first aid kit. So these are the 6 basic facility. If you go to any of the safety data sheet, will be there because it's a minimum as a preparation if you want to handle a chemical. So based on this basic facilities required from the regulation that we already employed by the United Nations in 2003. So we had a survey. We performed a survey. We discussed with the Ministry of Education. We have a joint collaboration project whereby we want to evaluate. We discussed with the Ministry why not we evaluate before we start to perform a program. Because having that reading, but if the facility is not there, they can't even practice it because of the lacking of facility. So that's the idea of this project is to jointly to work with the Ministry of Education to see how much the facility already available at the schools in order to able to handle the experiments in chemistry in a safe manner. So therefore, in Malaysia, typically the school will be in this type of buildings, the standard buildings. But this is not the school that we went because we cannot show. But this is typical buildings. These are typical lab, open space. You have benches, typical. Okay. So most of the design.
Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to be here today to talk to you. The topic itself is something very close to my heart, the topic of university community engagement. I think that we need to actually look at it in a much broader sense. The notion of university engagement on the one hand, and also what does community mean on the other hand. To me, community actually signifies a much broader meaning than a geographically bounded location. To me, community means society at large, the country, globally. I think that universities' role in engaging the community itself also came with the evolution of universities. I would like to just take us a little bit back to the fact that Asian universities tend to model ourselves after Western universities. I think if we look back in the evolution of our universities, it actually modeled after the evolution of Western universities. When the idea of university started in the past, it was actually to provide a special place for intensive learning, where scholarship could be encouraged, extolled, where scholarship could be concentrated away from the influence and disruption of what is mundane and what is very banal affairs, realities outside the world. It was taking scholars out of the everyday life into a special place where they could actually focus on their fields, study in a wholehearted manner, concentrated studying and learning so that they can produce knowledge. The quest for knowledge was extremely important in the earlier days, few centuries back. But if we look at our universities, particularly in Southeast Asia, our universities are really not that long. You know, we have at most a century-old, universities. But we pattern ourselves after the West. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the Western university itself, over time, had evolved into something that is actually quite separated from society and the community, as witnessed by campuses that are out in the nowhere. There's so many campuses in the West that are especially designed to be away from all the inducements, attractions, or whatever else that may disrupt scholarly attention. So universities are put outside the community. It's actually a very self-contained entity if we look at most universities from the past. Self-contained entities where the university itself has its own regulations, rules, dormitories, even campus police. I went to a university where the city police does not really encroach onto the campus. The campus has its own police force, and the rules and regulations, everything is set forth by the university itself. Well, that had served a function, that served a purpose over time, where scholars continue to produce scholarly work, and it was really felt that scholars would actually be the catalyst for change in society. People who went to the university in the earlier days did not only go for learning, for knowledge alone, but it's also for character formation, for the building of a good character, for civility, gentlemen and gentle ladies were produced in universities. So those were the notions, that you come out from the university, you'll be a wholesome person, a good citizen of society, where you will actually be the prime mover of change. At least you'll be example that other people will emulate. That was the model, and we really modeled after that. We have our earlier universities here in Thailand were built in such a model. But eventually, as society evolved and changes occurred, we found that universities no longer could do that, that very exclusive elitist function. University actually had to address issues surrounding it. And so there's emergence of what we call urban universities, the model of university within larger cities where there is no clearly defined campus.